What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at the number 1 ranked black middleweight fighter, in my opinion, Holman Williams. I have Charlie Billy ranked number 2 and Coco Kid ranked number 3. Now, Holman Williams was born January 30th, 1915 in Pensacola, Florida. He died July 15th, 1967. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches and had a 71-inch reach. He was a colored welterweight middleweight champion. He was managed by John Roxborough and Julian Black. He was trained in Detroit, Michigan, and Grubb's Gym in Harlem, New York. Now, Julian Black and John Roxborough would be the legendary managers for the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Holman Williams would have total bouts of 189, 146 wins, 36 knockouts, 31 losses. He would be knocked out himself in 3 separate occasions. He would have 11 draws. He would face the middleweight champs, Marcel Sedan and Jake LaMotta. Now, these two fighters were not champions at the time, but they would never give Holman Williams an opportunity when they became champion. He'd be in there with colored welterweight champion Coco Kid 9 separate occasions, colored welterweight and colored middleweight champion Charlie Burley. He would also mix it up with Texas welterweight and light heavyweight Jack Chase, known as Black Dynamite. Now, he was born in Texas 1917 and he died in Washington 1972. He stood 5 foot 8 inches and he weighed 145 to 162 pounds. Now, he'd be in there with Archie Moore, born Bennett, Mississippi. December 13th, 1916, he stood 5 foot 11 inches and had a 75-inch reach. He was a light heavyweight champion 1952 when he defeated Joey Maxim. Archie Moore would have a total bouts of 220 fights, 186 wins, 132 knockouts. Fascinating. 23 losses, 7 knockouts himself, and 10 draws. Now, Holman Williams would also be in there with Charlie Burley. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He stood 5 foot 9 and a half inches, and he weighed 145 to 162 and a half pounds. He was introduced to the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1983 and the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1992. What's fascinating about Charlie Burley, that he was in there with the who's who of boxing. And unfortunately for him, he was denied opportunities for title shots. Dynamite fighter was Charlie Burley. He would have 83 wins, 12 losses, 2 draws, 1 no contest, 50 knockouts. He was never stopped himself. And he'd be in there with Fritzy Zivic, who was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was a welterweight champion 1940 when he would defeat Henry Armstrong October 4th of 1940. And he would defeat Henry Armstrong in 1941 by knocking him out in the last round. This was in Madison Square Garden, the same year that Sugar Ray Robinson would make his professional debut. He would also face Coco Kid. Jimmy Bivens was from Dry Branch, Georgia. He had total bouts of 112. He won 86, knocked out 31 of his opponents. He lost 25 fights and he was stopped 5 times himself, and 1 draw. Archie Moore, Bennett, Mississippi, 220 bouts. Amazing. 131 knockouts. 23 losses. He was stopped 7 times, and he would have 10 draws. And he'd also be in there with Little Joe Louis. And Little Joe Louis was a dynamite. He was a handful. His name was Jack Chase. He was born in Warrensboro, Colorado. Sherman, Texas. January 27th, 1915. He stood 5 foot 10 inches. He was from Colorado and California. He was a middleweight champion in the color division. And he would face Charlie Burley, Archie Moore 5 times, Eddie Booker, Coco Kid, Lloyd Marshall, Oakland Billy Smith, Leon Zarita, and Jimmy Garrison, just to name a few. He would have a fighting record of 120 total bouts, 82 wins, 36 knockouts, 24 losses, and he'd be stopped on 3 separate occasions. He would have 12 draws. He'd be in there with Lloyd Marshall, born June 4th, 1914, in Mission County, Georgia. Stood 5 foot 10 inches and he weighed 155 and a half pounds to 189 pounds. He was an amateur background. He had fights 212 wins, 17 losses as an amateur. As a pro, he had 64 wins, 24 losses, 4 draws, and he was knocked out. He knocked out his opponent 32 pounds, 32 separate times. Now, Lloyd Marshall would be in there with Ken Overland. Ken Overland was a middleweight champion, and he would defeat him. Stefano Garcia, he would lose to him. Teddy Roth, he would defeat him. He'd also become a middleweight champion. Lou Bullard, defeat him. He would also become a middleweight and a welterweight champion. He would defeat Eddie Booker. He would lose to Eddie Booker, but Eddie Booker was a fantastic fighter. Black murderous raw middleweight and light heavyweight. He'd also be in there with Charlie Burley. He would defeat him. Archie Moore, he would defeat him once and he would lose to him twice. Ezra Charles, he would knock out Ezra Charles, and he would lose to Ezra Charles. Anton Christopherly, he would be a light heavyweight champion, he would defeat him. Curtis the Hatchet Shepherd, he would defeat him. Jake LaMotta, he would defeat him. Holman Williams, he would defeat him twice. Joey Maxim, he would defeat him. Joey Maxim would become the light heavyweight champion of the world. Jake LaMotta would become the middleweight champion of the world. Freddie Mills, he would defeat him. He would become a light heavyweight champion. Irish Bob Murphy, he would lose to him, and he would also lose to Carl Bubba Olson. Carl Bubba Olson would become middleweight champion. Irish Bob Murphy would get an opportunity to face Ezra Charles. But what I'm saying is, the fighters that I mentioned to you that were champions, he defeated. That goes to show you, had they been given opportunities to face these fighters when they had the belts, they would become champions. And that's the sad part about the Black Murderers Row. He'll also be in there with Jack Chase. Now, the problem with Jack Chase, he was in prison for shooting Little Tiger Aaron Wade, who was also a dynamic Murderers Row fighter. Now, Holman Williams worked at a Wonder Club, and while asleep, one early morning, he died in a fire while the club was evacuated. Apparently, no one knew he was in there, and that ended Holman Williams' life. So I just wanted to go through Holman Williams. Holman Williams was an outstanding fighter. He fought the who's who of boxing, could have defeated any man alive. Salute Holman Williams. Now, the thing with the Black Murderers Row, it was designed because the black fighters were not getting opportunities for title shots. So Buck Schubert would come up a name for these black fighters called the Black Murderers Row. And the Murderers Row was for the New York Yankees in the 1920s. But Buck Schubert felt as though they didn't get an opportunity, so he classified them as the Black Murderers Row. And these fighters consisted of Burt Littell, who was a middleweight, Aaron Wade, Charlie Burley, Holman Williams, Lloyd Marshall, Eddie Booker, Herbert Lewis Hardwood, which is Coco Kid. Some of the greatest fighters in the entire history of the game. And I mean the game. Salute to these outstanding fighters. Salute to fighters such as Jack Chase, Jeff Clark, Joe Jeanette, Sam Langford, Jack Thompson, Bowling Jim Johnson, Tuck Jackson, Clem Johnson, Kid Norfolk, Stonewall Allen, Jack Blackburn, Tiger Flowers, Larry Temple, Bowling Jim Johnson, Dixie Kid, Young Peter Jackson, Harry Wells, Dave Harley, just to name a few. George Cole, George Godfrey, Bob Armstrong, Lee Anderson, John Lester Johnson, Samuel Grant, Larry Gans, Panama Joe Gans, Panama Al Brown, Kid Henry, Morris Harris, Joe Green, Bob Green, Harry Gregg, Harry Smith, Jack McVeigh, Sam McVeigh, Nobby Joe Gans, Jack Blackburn, Lee Anderson, on and on and on. Alabama Kid. Salute to all of those fighters. This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, stating all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Kid Norfolk, Joe Jeanette. Just thinking these fighters at the top of my head because they all deserve my salute. Every last one of them. Didn't get the opportunities, but they will be saluted on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Peace.